All right, thanks everybody for coming, and thank you, Manny, for setting this up. I really appreciate all the hard work that the team has done to put together this conference. So if folks have been to some of my talks before, I generally present what our latest research is on the labor market and share how that data could be used in your work. So today's session, if you read the description, is a little bit different. Our team has been working on a professional development program for faculty at the community college system. And that professional development program is called the Strong Workforce Faculty Institute. And we've been so successful with this professional development that we decided to incorporate a labor market information track to the professional development program. As a result of that, I put together this work group or workshop where we will share with you what we've done this past year for faculty in terms of professional development, and then also get your feedback as to how we can evolve the professional development for faculty and instructors using labor market research. So I'll go through my formal presentation, but essentially what's going to happen is I'll present to you what our team has been doing this year, and then I will bring it to discussion for the group to share what you think, what we've done, and how we can move forward in case you want to participate in this type of professional development in the future. All right, so I'm going to share my slide now. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay. So if you're just joining us, we are here to look at guide and decide with labor market information. And as I mentioned, I want to give you an overview of the professional development that we've done so far and how this might be applicable to your day-to-day work. If you're not familiar with the work that we do, my name is Bartel. I'm the director of the Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. And the COE are basically a research center that is located across the state of California. We are funded by the Chancellor's Office. So the community colleges have the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office at the state, and the Chancellor's Office funds the COE in order to provide labor market research to the community college regions. So for me, you'll see that I'm down here in San Diego-Imperial area, and I serve the community colleges for the San Diego and Imperial counties. If you're not familiar with the community colleges in this region, here they are. We have 10 community colleges, and all of our labor market research is available for them, as well as to the public, but mostly catered to the colleges, for them to use in program development and strategic planning. Since I serve the colleges with labor market research, I also help provide training similar to these types of workshops. And one of the types of trainings that I helped facilitate or lead was the Strong Workforce Faculty Institute this past year. So if you're involved with any of the community college work and you've heard the term strong workforce, I'm not sure what it is, it's basically an initiative from the state. And at the local level, we decided to invest into faculty or instructors to help improve the student experience. So for today's session, I'm going to walk you through what the Strong Workforce Faculty Institute was, our plan for the second version of the Institute, and then again, as I mentioned earlier, go into discussions and recommendations from the group here, how we can improve moving forward. So our Strong Workforce Faculty Institute is a professional development framework for community college faculty members. Again, as I previously mentioned, we're thinking about opening it up even broader to beyond community college faculty members. So if you're not part of the community college system, don't worry, this might still be relevant to you. This PD, or professional development framework, includes the following concepts. We have compensation for the faculty at the colleges, project-based learning, so the professional development is centered around a project. There is guided reflection, data and research, since I help co-chair the data and research committee for the entire region for the community colleges. Data and research is a must. And then it's a cohort model. As we know, in many of our programs, cohorts usually have the best retention, and therefore we incorporated that into this professional development for community college faculty as well. So just to give you a little bit more detail on what the professional development entailed, we provided stipends for community college faculty this past year. So 2020 seems to have flown by very quickly, but essentially in order to participate in this PD program, faculty would get a stipend once they finish their project or their online form. The online form or this project is equivalent to what you would provide your students in a classroom, such as an assignment. And the faculty went through guided reflection. So the online form, think of it as kind of a survey or a form where you can fill out fields, but it has a series of investigative research and reflection questions. So it guides faculty in thinking about their courses with an inquiry mindset, and then asks them to reflect on what they learned after they looked at data. That leads me to data and research. So the form is filled with course level data for the faculty to analyze their students' retention and completion. So let's say that you taught a course, and in your course, you've taught it for the past 5 years. I'm not sure how many of you looked at your course level data in terms of demographic completion and retention, but the faculty in this Faculty Institute got that chance to do so by collaborating with their institutional researchers. So they were able to analyze, all right, which demographics were retained in my courses and which demographics completed, which students may have dropped out earlier than others. And so they were able to have that kind of inquiry mindset as they went through their course level data. And finally, but not, and most importantly, in my opinion, was that it is based on this cohort model. Each of those 10 colleges that I just shared with you had a project team, which was made up of deans, researchers, and even data coaches. That project team facilitated monthly meetings with faculty so that they can get together, share, discuss, and reflect. These are synchronous meetings. So when the pandemic hit, everybody had Zoom meetings where they were able to share what is it that they learned from their student data, what is it that they saw in terms of their own blind spots or gaps in which students were completing or being successfully retained. And then they reflected with each other what their findings were. So this is basically how those monthly meetings went. The faculty, the researchers, and deans met monthly, and they reviewed those online form questions, so that project or assignment that I mentioned. They would analyze their own specific course data, so their students. So it was very personal data to them, or relevant data to their work. Then they reviewed the course materials. So the online forum asked them certain questions such as, does your syllabus seem friendly? Does it have a tone where it looks like you are there to support the students throughout their journey during your course? Those types of reflection questions. And as the faculty, deans, and researchers analyzed those 3 sections, then they went into breakout rooms and then shared ideas with each other. So this Faculty Institute was a very successful, or in our opinion, it was a very helpful experience for them because they were able to analyze data and work with members of their team that they may not have collaborated with before. So essentially, to get the stipend or to finish the professional development, the faculty had to attend learning events on February 28th and 25th of this year. They also had to participate in those monthly check-in meetings that I just shared. And they had to complete that online form, that assignment, no later than July 31st. And again, I mentioned it includes those investigative research and reflection questions. And at the end of the reflection, the form asked the faculty for an action plan. What is it that they plan to do in the classroom now that they've learned all of this information about their students and about their teaching and learning practices? So let me give you some examples of what those questions entailed. The investigative research questions, the faculty had their course level data, and they had these types of questions in the form. The form would ask them questions such as, what types of students have high retention or success rates in your class? As I mentioned earlier, it was mostly broken down by demographic. So perhaps I'm a female instructor and I have a very high retention rate with female students and a low retention rate with male students. And I can take a look at that and see, is there a trend? Do I do this every single year? Is this something that happens very normally? And do students drop out consistently every year during a certain time frame? So the other questions that they would see would be similar to the second one here. Do you see differences in retention and completion rates based on class format, class length, etc.? So then the faculty started thinking, well, if I have a class that is 8 weeks long versus 12 weeks long, do I see higher retention and completion rates? If my class is hybrid, meaning in person and online versus completely online, do I have a higher retention rate? I know with the current situation, some of these questions might have to be modified, but these are based on data of courses in the past. So the form and the data that the faculty got on their courses led them to think a little bit more as an investigative researcher as to what's going on in terms of trends in their courses. And once they looked at all of this data, Then they started reflecting on what this means to them. So based on what they found out about their students, meaning one type of population over another was doing better or doing not as well, or maybe they had a lot of dropouts for one demographic, they're asked to reflect. Are they surprised by any of these trends? Why do they think this might be the case? What are some things that can be done to help retain or help the group complete the course? So after investigating and reflecting, the faculty are then prompted to create an action plan. And the action plan is really focused on what they specifically can do in the classroom. So what is it in the classroom can you change? Again, I mentioned earlier that we had some prompts about syllabus and course materials. So maybe the faculty member or the instructor might want to revise some of the way the language is written on the syllabus. What strategies do you apply in the classroom to improve retention and completion rates for your students? And how will you implement this action plan? What is the timeline? So after they finish the online forum, at the end of it, the faculty now have a plan in place where they can start implementing some of their ideas and some of the practices that they think might help them improve the retention and completion rates of their students. So this is basically a continuous improvement process, right? So you assess what's going on, you kind of reflect and analyze the situation, you make a plan to figure out what to do next, and then you reassess and see if your plan or your interventions worked. So that's really the main point of the Faculty Institute that we did this past year with community college instructors. And to top it off, we had all the faculty sign a letter of commitment. So it looks something like this. I'm not going to go through each of it, but it's basically all of those requirements that I mentioned earlier, that they will attend the events and that they will, look at their data with an open mind. The whole purpose of the Institute was to be investigative, not evaluative. So none of this data was going to, or none of these findings were going to be used against them in terms of performance assessments or anything like that. It was run by the Regional Consortium, which is a regional body made up of all the community college that supports the community colleges. So think of it as a third party and not specifically within the community college itself. And then it was facilitated by the Center of Excellence, the COE that I run. So we're basically third parties and we're just helping facilitate the conversation. And we had 233 faculty complete the program. There were 245 that started the program. So that was a really good retention rate. So to recap, this is basically what the first version of the Strong Workforce Faculty Institute looked like. The data track, or the data that the faculty looked at, were their course level enrollment, retention, and completion data. And that data is available to them at their institutional research offices. Until the Faculty Institute, not many faculty knew the data existed, and not very many faculty even asked for the data. So participating in this professional development program really got them to think about, oh, what data does exist in my campus for my students that I can take a look at, and partner with those institutional researchers to answer some of those types of questions that they have about their students. The trainers or the facilitators of the Faculty Institute were the deans and the institutional researchers. So again, I mentioned earlier, the deans and researchers met monthly, and they helped the faculty review their data, and together they collectively went through the online forum to answer those investigative and reflection questions. And the action plan at the end, after they've gone through all of the reflecting and the investigating, was to incorporate inclusive teaching in the classroom. Faculty gradually realized, or very quickly realized, that they had certain blind spots in their teaching and learning practices. And so they decided to think about different plans that they can incorporate, or different actions that they could incorporate, where it'd be more inclusive for all of their students to succeed or to complete, rather than just a few that they normally connect with. I was going through some of the videos of the faculty sharing out their experiences through the Faculty Institute. And one of the videos had a faculty member who said that they were really great with Latinx female students, but not so much with Latino male students. And they realized that even though they taught English and they expected English to be a rigorous subject, the 10 students dropping out at the beginning of the first couple of weeks seemed to be a normal thing to them. But once they looked at that disaggregated data and that course level data, they realized that their female students weren't dropping out, but their male students were. So having known that, now they're starting to think, okay, maybe I need to teach in a certain way that's a little bit more welcoming towards the Latino male students, because I seem to really connect well with the Latina female students. So those are the types of kind of action plans that they started thinking about. And our first cohort was this year, spring of 2021. So that's a quick overview of what we did this past year. And what I need your help in is to figure out the second version of this institute. And the second version of it will look a little bit something like this. So on the left side, very similar that you saw earlier, all of the similar similar fields that I mentioned. But on the right side, instead of just looking at course level completion, retention, and completion data, the individuals that go through this professional development program will go through labor market information and student employment data, or will be able to review labor market information and student employment data. So now we're looking at the labor market, the job market, and how well students are performing after they leave the community college system, and analyzing that data sets to make decisions at the classroom level. The sources of this information is from us, the COE, the Centers of Excellence. We have data to the labor market research that we would provide to faculty and counselors. And we have a data source called Launchboard, which is funded and ran by the Chancellor's Office. West Ed actually helps put it together. And so these two data sets will be combined in reports that we would provide to the individuals participating in this LMI student employment data track. And we would help facilitate these monthly meetings, similar to how the deans and the institutional researchers facilitated their monthly meetings at their campuses. And the goal at the end, after they look at data and reflect, is to create an action plan where the labor market information will be used to guide students in career and course planning. So a lot of times we are very focused on the academic planning, which courses are needed in order for them to get to the four-year institutions, or what courses are needed for them to finish their major. But now we want to encourage people to think a little bit differently than that traditional mindset. How can we use labor market information to help guide students while they're taking courses and while they're planning their careers, as opposed to just the academic track? And then finally, the participants would be all interested faculty and counselors. So we're not restricting it only to faculty members. Unfortunately, the stipends will only be applicable for the community college faculty, but my team wants to make this training available to all counselors. Okay, so that's the second version of this. We'll have two different tracks running at almost the same time. So this one will be running first, and then this one will go back to the course level enrollment, retention, and completion data. So if you participated in the Faculty Institute as a community college instructor, then you'll recognize this one. And this is the new track that we're planning to add to the Faculty Institute. So here is the tentative timeline. And this timeline or plan is dependent on approval. So between now and January 2020, we are simply discussing and planning the second version of the Faculty Institute, which again has that LMI and student employment data track. Then in February, we will have the first cohort actually it should be February 26th, because I think that's the Friday. The first cohort for the data track will begin. And then the same thing as we did this past year, the faculty will meet monthly to work on specific sections and share with each other in that cohort format to keep that momentum going. And then once they're done with that, then the second cohort for the first track, the first data track, which focuses on course level enrollment, retention, completion, will begin. So it gives some time for folks to work on their course level enrollment, retention, and completion data, and then we can start a new cohort between February and June. So the labor market and labor market information and student employment track will include this type of training. We'll provide an overview of LMI, so basically an LMI 101. We'll explain what demand and supply is. We'll have continuous improvement and share how folks can use data and research for continuous improvement in general, So it's not just LMI information that they can use, but for any kind of data and research, whenever they want to change and assess what they're working on. And then specifically focus on the application of LMI. So how to use existing resources in your day-to-day work. So for the LMI application, I've come up with a few scenarios with our research that we've done this past year that I want to share with everybody. So we will incorporate this kind of scenario work in the Institute for version 2.0. I do want to hear your thoughts if this is an appropriate way to do it. But essentially, these are some of the scenarios in which LMI are used. The first one being, typically, someone will come up to me and say, Tina, I need to write a problem statement for a grant. I'm trying to create a new program, and I know that there are jobs that are in demand in this particular sector, but I really don't know how to write the problem statement. So the COE, my center, provides a lot of resources, and here are two of them that are listed, and you can find these links on our resources on the slide links. Oh, you can find these links on the slides, which I think you have access to Whova, but if you have difficulty, then let us know. We'll be able to put that into the Whova itself. But here are two resources, the Career Education Guide and the Geographic Distribution of Need. So to write a problem statement, folks will ask things like, all right, why is this sector important? What jobs are in demand? How do I apply for this grant by writing that statement of need or problem statement? So if you have not seen it yet, there is a career ed guide, which I'm about to pull up right now so you can see, that our conference coordinators have posted on the regional website. And the career education guide looks a little bit something like this. So if you've been asked to write a problem statement, this is where I would recommend you starting off. All right, well, I need to know how important the sector is. Let's say that you are supporting a program in advanced manufacturing, and you need to tell grant makers how important advanced manufacturing is, what it is, and how big it is in our region. So this career education guide, again, this is one of the resources from the counselor conference. It'll give you a description here on this page, and then it will tell you some fast facts. There are over 92,000 people employed in advanced manufacturing. It's projected to grow at least 1% in total jobs. There are over 3,000 businesses, and students can expect to earn over 96,000 jobs in advanced manufacturing. That's why it's important, and that's why we are creating a program for it, or that is why we're applying for this grant to support our program, because that's how important it is in our region. So this career education guide really gives you those high-level numbers for you to write that statement of need. And if you want to go into more detail, the career education guide gives you the entry-level wages for the types of jobs that you can find in the sector. So we just updated this. We include the hourly rate for the entry level and the salary. So now you have both if you're not familiar with annualizing it. Basically what we did was we multiplied the hourly rate by 2080, which is the typical number of hours that a full-time person would work in a year. And you can go through here and say, you know, my program teaches for machinists, maintenance and repair workers, and they make about 33,000 a year to entry level. Welders make about 37, etc. So you can see here the types of wages that these occupations can train for, and you can kind of create a career ladder. So here's the entry level for those with a high school diploma and some training, those with some college, an associate degree, and a bachelor's degree or higher. So this is all the information you can put in your proposal if you're applying for a grant, for example. Okay. So that's one resource that we provided, and this is brand new. It just came out last month. So we just finished with that one. So the other resource I mentioned earlier was that Geographic Distribution of Need tool. So we have a link in the slide. So if you didn't get a chance to look at it, the slides look like something like this. And you can click directly onto the slide. But if you click on the Geographic Distribution of Need, you'll come to this. It's called a Tableau tool, and it's basically a data visualization tool. Essentially, what our team did was use this tool to visualize the data that might be important to our stakeholders. So let me show you how this would work. Let's say that you're applying for a grant to give money to, to give out laptops to your students, but you need to target areas in which those laptops are being distributed. The pandemic hit, you have all these resources. A lot of your students don't have access to the internet or computers. You really want to apply for a grant to give them those laptops or computers. So let's say we've spoken to San Diego County, and I want to identify, based on this metric, well, I can't see this with here, the households without a computer. So if I click on that, the map will update, and you'll see that the darker the zip code color, the more need there is in that particular zip code. And the lighter, you'll see that that's a less need, right? The less percentage of your household. So if you're not familiar with using the maps, you can also look at the table below. So just this map alone will tell you that of all the zip codes in San Diego County, these are the top zip codes in which there are the most percentage of households without a computer, with access to a computer. So you can see here, and then in the grant application, you can write something like, we serve students a lot, 90% of our students are from 911 zip code. And that seems to be the area in all of San Diego County that has the most households without a computer. So if you give us this grant, this would really support the area with the most need, right? So the research that I provided with you shows you both sides. The side where the employer has demand for those jobs and the need in the demand side. And here's the supply side, the students. The students are the ones where they're located in the region, and you can pinpoint exactly which areas have the most need in that statement of need. All right, so that is one very quick scenario in which you can use some of our research. Manny, do we have any questions before I keep moving on? I know I'm just going rapid fire.
No, you're fine. We don't have any questions. We don't have any questions yet, but if we do, I'll definitely interrupt you. But this is a good time to let everyone know that if you joined in late, you can put in your Q&A directly into the WOVA chat, or the Q&A in the WOVA or in the chat box in WOVA, and then I'll bring it up to Tina. So don't be shy.
Thank you, Manny.
No problem.
So I'm sharing with you all that's this one specific scenario because this is the kind of thought process we'll incorporate in the second version of the Faculty Institute. The assignment or that online form will have folks go through the steps that I just shared with you. This is a scenario that you've been asked to complete by either your supervisor or another stakeholder. Here are the resources that you might want to use to do that. So another scenario that I frequently come across is colleges ask me what jobs are the jobs that I'm training for in demand, and do we have other related programs in other colleges? So on the K-12 side, let's say that you're training for a specific job, let's say computer networking, and you have those skill sets that you're training for your students, but you don't know what colleges have programs for that particular skill set. So let's take a look at labor market briefs as one of the resources first. So again, the scenario is like you want to know that job you're training for in demand and if you have related programs. So if you click on labor market brief, it should take you to the landing page of the regional consortium website. And this is where our Center of Excellence have consolidated all of our reports for specific programs. So taking advantage of that example I said earlier, we're going to look at ICT and digital media, which is computer. Let's say that we're looking at computer user support specialists because that's for computer networking. And you click on that, you'll see that this report gives you high-level information about the occupation. It's catered toward a community college audience, but at least it gives you a lot of information that you might need if you're in the K-12 system, for example. So our reports are usually used to recommend or endorse a new program. If we don't endorse it, then we'll have a red dot right here. If we do endorse it, then it'll be green. If we somewhat are in the middle because of certain criteria, we'll put a yellow dot right here. So that's what you can see here in the high level view of our report. We'll show if there's a supply gap in the region, meaning that there's a lot of demand from employers, but not enough students to fill those demand. If the job or jobs pay a living wage, and the general expected level of education the job and the employers expect for the job. Then you'll see the number of institutions that provide training specific to this occupation and then the number of annual openings. So basically that's labor market demand. How many job openings do employers expect to fill every year for this particular occupation? So there's a lot of narrative in here. I'll let folks if you want to explore our reports, go through it, that's great. But I just want to let you know this resource exists so you can use it if you ever have the situation in the future. So similarly, let's say that you are training for a program that leads to computer user support specialists. Then you can see here, there's been a ton of growth for this particular job. Even in online job postings, employers have been posting a lot for this job. You can see the earnings for the computer user support specialist in San Diego County. And then what I really enjoy having here is to look at which courses exist at the community college level. Because if I'm going to create a new program, or if I want to see who I can partner with, I want to know who's offering a program for that particular occupation. So here it'll show which types of programs exist at the colleges. So if you are familiar with anybody at the colleges, you can reach out to them and say, hey, it looks like Palomar College, you have a computer support program. We also have a computer support program at our school, and we're looking forward to creating a pathway to your college. Is there any way that we can partner up with you, and so forth? So this is another way you can use this report. And then we show if there's the demand versus supply, if there's a supply gap for the occupation. So in California, there are over 4,700 annual openings that need to be filled, and we're not producing enough. And the same thing in San Diego County, there are 278 annual openings that we could be filling if we produce more students. And then there's a variety of other data here, but you can see which companies hire for this occupation, what type of educational attainment people expect for it. And you can see it's across the board, right? Associate degree, some college, a bachelor's degree. And then the types of software, soft skills, and specialized skills for the occupation. So all of our reports follow this format if you go to the labor market briefs page. Okay. All right, so that was the labor market briefs for one of the resources of identifying whether or not there's data for a particular occupation that your class or course trains for. But now let's say you're interested in knowing what other colleges have programs for this particular occupation. So if you click on the Chancellor's Office Curriculum Inventory link on the slide, you'll go to a site that looks like this. And this is an inventory of, it's a catalog inventory of all the courses in the community college system. So let's say you want to look at one of your partner colleges, Cumaka College, and you want to know what types of programs they have. This is a list of all of their courses and programs in their catalog. So you'll see that music education has an associate degree, an AS degree, etc. So this is a really helpful resource for K-12, in my opinion, or even in the community college system if you're looking for partners to see which types of programs exist in the catalogs for each of our colleges. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to my slide. Okay, so as a reminder, the scenario in which I shared those two resources with you all is the scenario that people are asking about, which jobs that you're training for are in demand and if there are any related programs. All right, a couple more scenarios and I think we're done with the presentation piece of it. So another scenario that I've been asked a lot is, please, Tina, just tell me what's in demand. What are some in-demand jobs? So again, you can go back to the career education guide that I shared with you earlier. And that career education guide has by sector, the types of jobs that are in demand by education. So you can find out which jobs are in demand with just a high school diploma, with just an associate, with a bachelor's degree or more. So I'm not going to go back to the career guide, but there you can find it by sector. The other resource that we provide to you is the Resilient Jobs Report. So if you click on Resilient Jobs, you'll find a report that looks like this. And this is something that was asked of us during the pandemic. Folks kept asking the COE, what programs should we prioritize? We need to know what programs are resilient. So my team looked at the top jobs during the Great Recession and during the first few months of the pandemic. And I always have a caveat to our reports because things might change since the time we produced the report. So we're planning on doing a refresh of this early next year. but at least you could take a look at this report as a starting point as to which jobs seem to be most resilient. So what we did was, for the Great Recession, it was the period between 2007 and 2009. And if you're available tomorrow, I have a session on this particular report in detail at 9 o'clock. And we have a panel of resilient industry folks that will be talking about their resiliency in the labor market. But in any case, we looked at the Great Recession. And during the Great Recession between 2007 and 2009, we looked at the jobs that were in most demand during that economic downturn. Mind you, it was one of the biggest financial crises in a very long time, and it was when the housing market crashed. So it was very, very small in terms of the number of jobs that were recession-proof. But we found them anyways. So if you go to the recession-proof list, you'll see a list of the jobs that were resilient during that Great Recession period, 2007, 2009. And this one here is specific to middle skill jobs, or the jobs that the community colleges can train for. But we provided the full list of recession-proof jobs in Appendix A, or recession resilient jobs. And you can click on each of these and they'll take you to a source called ONET. And ONET, if you've never accessed this website before, gives you more detail as to what the job does in terms of the tasks, the skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities, etc. Excuse me, let's go back here. Oh, I went too far.
Tina, while you look that up,
Sure.
One question was just about sharing the links that you're going through.
Yes, they are embedded in the slides. If you don't have access to the slides, Manny, what do you recommend I do to give the links to everybody?
You could, if you send a link to me or send it to me, I could make sure it gets out to everyone.
Sure. Here, I should be able to click on these. Yes. So let's share this one. I'll put the slide link into the chat. Oh wait, the chat's disabled. I will just send it to you.
Actually, I could just quickly enable it if that, and then I'll put it back into the Wova app.
Okay, here we go.
Perfect.
That should be the link to the slides from today. And you should be able to click on this, land on the slides, and then click on each of these links. There you go.
Perfect. I'm sharing the links in the Wova platform, everyone.
Thanks, Manny.
No problem.
Awesome. Good teamwork. All right, so our, let's see, let's go back to the other one. So we talked about the resilient jobs. So going back to this report, here's the list of those recession resilient jobs that I mentioned. So that was one time period that we looked at. Again, we looked at the jobs that were most resilient during the financial crisis in 2007, 2009, that paid a good living wage, paid wages at least at or above the living wage. Then we started looking at top jobs during the pandemic. So what you see here is the analysis. So for every month, we looked at the jobs that made the top 50 jobs list with the number of online job postings. So let's zoom in a little bit. So for the month of March, my team looked at the top 50 jobs that had the most online job postings that month. And for March of 2020, you can see that these are the occupations that were the top 50 jobs with the most online job postings for the month of March. Mind you, we looked at over 800 occupations. So the fact that this made the top 50s list is kind of the cream of the crop, right? And then we repeated that exercise every month during these 4 months. So in April, accountants and auditors also made the top 50 jobs list in April. And it came up again in May and again in June. And you can go down the line and see which other jobs, going back to that computer user support specialist example, that job made the top 50s list every month in these first 4 months of the pandemic. So according to this research, it looks like these jobs are pretty much the most resilient jobs during the pandemic, at least in the first few months. If you go further down on the list, you'll see that other occupations started showing up in the top 50s list later on in the months. You can kind of gauge them based on some of the policies that happen at the legislative level. So for example, waiters and waitresses, those online job postings increased tremendously in June. So I think that's around the time when things got lifted a little bit, perhaps. Same thing with hotel, motel, and resort desk clerks. That made the top 50 jobs list. So I'm very interested to see how this pans out. Now, that, as soon as January hits, we'll have data between March and December. So we'll be able to see over time which jobs were resilient, that went up and down during this time. But again, you could use this resilient job study as a resource when folks ask you, so which jobs should I focus on? Which jobs should I tell my students to really look at, especially considering what's going on right now in the world? Okay, well, since I'm here, let's just use these slides. And then finally, another one, we always hear this from employers. I don't find enough people with soft skills. Well, what if a student asks you, what are soft skills? Well, you can go into an explanation of what they are, or you can also use our report. So we produced a report called 21st Century Employability Skills, which is just a fancy way that the community colleges call soft skills. Essentially, soft skills have many names. They are called baseline skills, essential skills, foundational skills, emotional intelligence, etc. But we grouped all of the top soft skills in the nation and in San Diego County into 6 categories. So these are the 6 main categories that we group them into. And these are the types of words that showed up in online job postings from employers. So we saw bilingualism came up a lot, communication skills was the top, flexibility and adaptability, especially during this time. Employers really need people who are flexible and adaptable. Things are changing all the time. People who have analytical skills, critical thinking, problem solving, etc. So the report provides you with explanations of what those 6 categories are. And if you go down to the appendix, they'll actually give you a description, a definition for each of the soft skills that you might be thinking about sharing with somebody or teaching somebody. So here those descriptions or definitions are. And then we provided an analysis of the top soft skills in the nation and in San Diego County. So what you're seeing here is that these are the number of online job postings that we saw in 2019 with the words communication skills. And that was also the top soft skill in San Diego County job postings with 175,000 online job postings that listed communication skills. So you can see here that the top 9 soft skills are pretty similar. The ones in bold match both the nation and San Diego County. And so the top 9 soft skills here are the ones that I would really focus on if I'm trying to tell a student, hey, you might want to work on your teamwork, your customer service skills, communication skills, organization skills, and so forth. And if the student asks you, what does that mean? You have the definitions down here. And again, this is a high-level guide, but at least it gives you an idea of what to look at when you're trying to embed soft skills into your curriculum or into your classroom. Okay. All right, so those are the scenarios that I wanted to share with folks in terms of our most recent research that we've released this year. Any questions before I move on to asking some of you some more questions?
Feel free to post your questions or comments in the WOVA chat. It's on the right hand. It's on the right side of your screen. It says Q&A, pose and chat. Don't be shy.
All right, while folks are doing that, I don't know, Manny, if you allow them to speak during this time, but I wanted to ask folks these discussion questions. So again, these are some of the scenarios that we're going to incorporate in our training. I've shared with you at a high level how this can be done. But essentially, what I really want to know is, do counselors and faculty often collaborate at your institution or your organization? Or is it something that is done more independently? Because the purpose of the Faculty Institute second version is to help increase that collaboration among different groups. And the main groups we're really targeting are instructional faculty and counseling faculty.
Feel free to unmute yourselves. If you want to jump in and chat, feel free to unmute yourself. Or if you want to, you could put your comment in the chat section on the right-hand side of the WOVA app. I mean, the WOVA platform. It'll be a quiz at your next meeting.
All right. It's fine if folks don't have any answers to this now. I just wanted to ask because otherwise we're kind of planning this as we go along. And so I want to make sure that the scenarios that we plan around are focused on what they want.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Just had a chat come in and said, yes, I think there is a combination of both on our campus. Also, there's collaboration with the Career Center.
Oh, great. Okay. Is there a way for us to help increase that collaboration? So that way that both career centers and faculty are hand in hand. So let's say that a faculty member is teaching a class and it seems like that student in that class is really interested in a specific occupation. How often is it that that faculty member will tell a career counselor, hey, my student's interested in this job. Do you have a contact related to this particular field or something along those lines? Is there any that kind of collaboration going on?
Yes, yes, definitely. I think this information you shared is helpful for us as work-based learning and job placement.
Awesome. Thanks, Veronica. You typed very quickly. I appreciate that. Excellent. Okay. So now that you mentioned it, that's great. That means that, you know, if we provide this professional development, it will help increase that collaboration. So that's very helpful. Thank you. What about finding the student skills or interests? Usually we are told that the first point of contact between students and the campus overall is with faculty. So I guess it's a similar question to earlier. How do you find out about your students' skills and interests?
And again, you can unmute yourselves. You can unmute yourself, or you could throw it in the chat. Thank you. We also, Veronica added, thank you. We also have an in-demand jobs workshop. We collaborate with the Career Center for students and community members.
Excellent. And feel free to reach out to us if you need help with content, because we have a lot of resources already available. What we will probably do is just point you to the resources that exist, and then hopefully that will be enough information for you to add to your workshops. All right, then my final question to the group. Sorry, Manny, did you have another thing to add?
Yes, I was going to say, I saw someone raise their hand, and I was going to see if they wanted to speak, but continue.
Awesome. Okay. So my final question for the group is, what requests or research questions that you have that could be answered with labor market research or labor market information? So I've shared with you all, I think, about 4 different scenarios. But are there other scenarios or questions that you've just been stumped about that we could maybe create a report to help you with?
And actually, there was one comment I had forgot to add earlier from Veronica when she had replied. It was, our career counselors use MBTI and Career Coach to assess students.
Oh, that's awesome. MBTI is a good one as well. And thank you for using Career Coach. I believe we presented on Career Coach last year as well. It looks like Jacob unmuted himself. I don't know if Jacob, you wanted to add anything or respond to that last question or any of the questions.
Yes, I saw that too, actually. Jacob, you could unmute yourself and speak. I saw you, Jacob had raised his hand, so I wanted to.
Tina, this is Denise McAndrews. If you have a quick minute, I'll jump in.
Sure, I think we have 5 minutes left. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
First of all, I really want to thank you for doing that work about resilient jobs and for updating that. Just being right in the field with job seekers right now, it's becoming a very important topic. And as you already know, the pandemic is, it's creating a large divide.
Mhm.
For women primarily who are now taking care of children at home more than men are, and for service workers who tend to kind of live on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. So we really need to ramp up, and for program development, we need to be, knowing where to shift to. I am from an adult school. We're pretty nimble. We can move quickly. And so that data, I'm just anxious to chop right into it right now. I'm so thankful to have it.
Oh, thanks, Denise. Thank you very much for that comment. Yeah, sometimes we produce these and they're gonna go in the void, and we have no idea if folks actually use them in their day-to-day work. So I'm glad it was helpful. And if you have any questions, yeah, let me know. Again, when we release the new version of it, we'll definitely send it out and it'll be updated on our website.
And Tina, we had a comment by Alexander. He said, we use these reports frequently in K-12. Please continue the research around sector data, in-demand skills, alignment with college degree programs, etc.
Thanks, Alex.
Carolina said, hi Tina, thank you for all the amazing research you are doing.
Thank you. I look forward to also seeing you tomorrow at our session. All right, Jacob, if you can't mute yourself, feel free to just add it to the chat on Whova as well. I just opened up the link so I could see it if you wanted to type in your question.
Tina, you said you could see the chat too? I was going to, Jacob's typing, so I didn't.
I don't know if you want to read it out loud for folks on Zoom, just in case they don't have the Whova opened. Yeah.
Perfect. Jacob mentioned that he's MBTI SII certified. So I use assessment. So he uses assessment tools. Additionally, he evaluates military personnel's military specialty, MOS, to evaluate their skill sets.
Got it. I haven't heard of the MOS, but I will look into that too. I think one of the projects we have been noodling in our mind is figuring out which resources are already out there in terms of translating military skills to civilian skills and vice versa. I know that ONET started something along those lines. Excuse me, let me stop the share now. If you haven't visited ONET, I just shared that link very briefly, onetonline.net. I think it was .com. Let me see, which is it? onetonline.org. So they started doing a crosswalk between civilian and military skills, and we're hoping that once that gets a little bit more refined, we'll be able to use that for a future report.
And I'll put the ONET link in the chat. And then Jacob said, what tools are available to research if careers are at risk in the future for automation? And I put in the link to the ONET online in the chat room.
That's a very good question. We started a research on that, but haven't completed it. But I believe it's either ONET or Burning Glass that have a list of jobs that are at risk of automation. Let me see if I can pull it up. Automation. So what we do is we usually look at nationwide reports, and then take that and regionalize it to see which kind of jobs or which reports would be specific to San Diego County. So one of our resources is Burning Glass, which is the data source that combs for online job postings. And a lot of our research has that data in there. So here's a couple of links that I'm going to put in Whova from Burning Glass regarding automation. And I apologize, we don't have a report on which jobs are at risk for automation yet. But here's one report.
And as you put that, Tina, Jacob also said we have internal resources. He used here at the base beyond ONET. Happy to discuss that with you, Tina, when you all can connect.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
And I just want to be mindful of time. So since we started about 1.5 minutes later, if that's okay, we could go to maybe another 1.5 minutes as well, to 11:32 or 11. And then I'll close out. A few just housekeeping things for the closeout is that the presentation and the video recording will be available. Will be available for you all afterwards, after the presentation. And also, if you could rate the session at the end, it's on your screen where the Whova app is on the bottom where it says add agenda, like session, rate session. If you could take a few quick minutes to rate the session when you're done, that would be also great. And then before we log on, we'll do like a quick video screenshot with everyone.
Thanks for coordinating this, Maddie.
Oh, no, it's, I had the easiest part, trust me. Veronica said, thank you. This was very helpful. All righty, so if there's no more questions, I don't see any questions in the Q&A. In the chat, a bunch of folks are saying, Tina, thank you, very helpful. Jacob, Carol, you all are welcome. And I'm seeing the links here. And again, everyone, the presentation and the recording will actually be available